Stop. Before you scroll past this video, before the noise of the world pulls you back into the endless distraction, I need you to sit with something for a moment. There's a wound inside you. You may have buried it under years of achievement. You may have covered it with relationships, with success, with constant motion, with the polished surface of a life that looks fine from the outside. But it is still there. The wound of having been mistreated by someone you should have been safe with. A parent who could not love you the way you needed to be loved. A partner who took more than they ever gave. A friend who betrayed the trust you placed in them. A family member whose cruelty made no sense, then or now. A teacher, a sibling, a community. A person whose treatment of you left a mark that you have spent years trying to understand. And the question that has lived inside you, sometimes loud and sometimes silent, but never fully gone, is the same question that every wounded human being has asked since the beginning of time. Why? Why did they do that to me? Why did they choose to hurt the one person who had opened themselves to them? Why was I the one they aimed their cruelty at when there were so many other places they could have placed their pain? And the answers you have been given by therapy culture, by self-help books, by well-meaning friends, by your own mind trying desperately to make sense of the senseless, those answers have not satisfied you, because something inside you has always known they were incomplete. Today I want to give you the answer that almost no one is willing to give you. The answer that Carl Jung, the most profound depth psychologist who ever lived, spent his entire career circling around. The answer that mythology has been encoding into stories for thousands of years. The answer that the deepest mystical traditions of every culture have been pointing toward in their most quiet and serious moments. The truth about why they mistreated you is not what you think. It is not because you were not enough. It is not because there was something wrong with you. It is not because you deserved it. It is not because you somehow attracted it. It is not because of any failure on your part to be lovable or worthy or good. The truth is something else entirely. And once you understand it, something that has been frozen inside you for years, perhaps for decades, will finally begin to thaw. Let us begin. Carl Jung discovered something about the human psyche that most people never come to understand. And the people who hurt you almost certainly did not understand it about themselves. He discovered that every human being carries within them a vast unconscious dimension. Not just memories they have forgotten, not just feelings they have suppressed, something deeper. Jung called it the shadow. The shadow is the totality of everything within a person that they cannot acknowledge about themselves. Their rage, their grief, their fear, their unmet needs, their unhealed wounds, their forbidden desires, their sense of inadequacy, their terror of being truly seen. Everything they were taught was unacceptable, everything they learned to hide in order to be loved or accepted or safe in the family or culture they were born into. All of it gets pushed down into the shadow, out of awareness, out of consciousness, buried so deeply that the person genuinely does not know it is there. And here's where Jung made the discovery that explains so much of human cruelty. The shadow does not stay buried. It cannot stay buried. The energy of everything that has been repressed continues to exist within the psyche. And because the conscious self refuses to acknowledge it, that energy must find another way to express itself. It does so through projection. The person takes the contents of their own shadow and unconsciously casts those contents onto another human being. They see in the other what they cannot see in themselves. They attack in the other what they cannot tolerate within themselves. They punish in the other what they have been punishing themselves for in the dark and unacknowledged places of their own psyche their entire life. This is the first truth I need you to understand. When someone mistreated you, they were almost never actually responding to you. They were responding to a phantom, a projection, a figure constructed from the materials of their own unhealed inner world that they had unconsciously placed over your face. You happened to be standing in the line of fire of a war that was actually being fought inside them. You were not the cause. You were the screen onto which their inner film was being projected. And because they did not know this about themselves, because no one had ever taught them how to look honestly at the contents of their own depths, they genuinely believed they were responding to you. They believed their cruelty made sense. They believed you had earned it through some failure or flaw they could clearly see in you. But what they were seeing was not you, it was them. This is the first layer of the truth. Now we need to go deeper. Because while projection explains the mechanism, it does not yet explain why some people become so trapped in their projections that they spend years actively damaging the human beings closest to them. For that, we have to understand something even more painful. People who have not done the work of meeting their own shadow are quite literally not capable of seeing other people clearly. They cannot see you, not because they choose not to, because the unhealed parts of their psyche occupy so much of their inner field that almost everyone they encounter is partially or completely obscured by the projections those wounded parts generate. When such a person looks at you, they are seeing through layers of unprocessed pain, through screens of unmet childhood needs, through filters of beliefs about themselves that they have never examined and that operate beneath the level of their awareness. Your actual face, your actual heart, your actual being, these were not what they were responding to. They were responding to the meanings they unconsciously assigned to you, drawn from a database of unhealed experiences that has been compiled inside them since their own earliest years. And here's the part that almost no one will tell you. Often the people who hurt you the most were the ones unto whom you most reminded them of something they had buried within themselves. You were too alive in the places they had killed off their own aliveness. You were too tender in the places they had armored themselves against tenderness. You were too honest in the places they had constructed elaborate lies in order to survive. You were too free in the places they had agreed to be imprisoned in order to be accepted by their family or culture or generation. Your existence reminded them, in some deep and unconscious way, of the parts of themselves they had betrayed in order to become the person they had become. And rather than allow that reminder to lead them back toward their own soul, which would have required a courage they did not possess, they instead attacked the messenger. They attacked you. For the crime of being what they had once been before they began the lifelong project of disowning themselves. This is why the brightest children are so often targeted by wounded parents, why the most sensitive partners attract the most unconscious abusers, why the most authentic friends are betrayed by the most performative members of their social circles. Light reveals what darkness has been hiding, and the unhealed parts of others cannot bear what your light reveals about them, so they attempt to extinguish you. Not because there's anything wrong with you, because there is something profoundly true about you that they cannot face within themselves. Right now, if something in this video is reaching the wound that has been waiting silently inside you to finally be understood, type 777 in the comments below. The frequency of a soul that is ready to receive the truth that will finally set it free. The signal that you're willing to look directly at what has been hidden from you and let the seeing transform you. Type it now, not as performance, as declaration, as the conscious choice to stop accepting the false explanations and finally allow the deeper truth to do its work in you. The field always responds to those who declare themselves with seriousness and intention. Now we go deeper still, because there's the question I know you're asking, the question every human being who has ever been mistreated eventually arrives at. If they were really projecting, if they were really unable to see me, then why did it have to be me? Why was I the one who happened to be in their line of fire? What made me the chosen target for their unconscious war? This is where we encounter one of the most difficult truths in all of depth psychology. And I'm going to tell it to you directly because you deserve directness rather than comfortable evasion. The truth is this. There was almost certainly a pattern in your own psyche that placed you within range of the people who hurt you. I'm not saying you caused what happened to you. I'm not saying it was your fault. I'm not engaging in the spiritual bypassing that blames victims for their own wounds. I'm saying something more precise and more useful. There was something in your own unconscious that recognized something in theirs. There was a magnetism between your wounds and their wounds that operated entirely beneath conscious awareness. Their unhealed parts called out to your unhealed parts. Your unhealed parts answered their unhealed parts. And this is not a curse. This is the mechanism by which the psyche tries to heal itself. Jung understood that the unconscious is constantly seeking integration, constantly trying to bring buried material into the light so that it can be seen and processed and made whole. And one of the primary ways it does this is by drawing into our lives the exact relationships that will activate our unintegrated material. The mother who could not love you correctly was activating something. The partner who repeated patterns of betrayal was activating something. The friend whose abandonment shattered you was activating something, not as punishment, as initiation. These relationships were the curriculum your soul had registered for, the exact educational program that would force into your awareness the patterns you had inherited, the wounds you had been carrying since before you had language, the unconscious beliefs about yourself that needed to be examined and dismantled before you could become who you were actually meant to be. This does not make their behavior acceptable. Cruelty is cruelty, regardless of what it teaches. The person who mistreated you is fully responsible for their choices and bears the full moral weight of what they did to you. But the deeper psychological truth is that they were also serving a function in your soul's development that you could not see at the time and may only now be beginning to understand. They were the catalyst, the fire under the alchemical vessel, the pressure that revealed what needed to be transformed. And here's the paradox that liberates rather than blames. The very fact that you're watching this video, the very fact that you're still asking the question why, the very fact that you have refused to settle for easy answers and surface explanations means that you're using the wound for its intended purpose. You're alchemizing it. You're turning the lead of what was done to you into the gold of who you are becoming. Most people who are mistreated never reach this point. They remain trapped in the original wound, replaying it endlessly, attracting variations of the same pattern across decades of their lives, never asking the deeper questions, because the deeper questions are too painful to ask. But you are asking them. You are doing the work. You are taking what was done to you and using it as the raw material for your own integration. This is the work of individuation. This is what Jung spent his life trying to teach. This is the highest form of psychological courage that a human being can demonstrate. Now we move into the next layer of the truth. The people who mistreated you almost always had themselves been mistreated. This is not an excuse. It is an explanation. The wounded wound, the traumatized traumatize. The people who never received the love they needed in childhood are almost incapable of giving the love they never received to anyone else, including the people they would consciously claim to love most. You were on the receiving end of generations of unprocessed pain that flowed through them because they had never been given the tools to process it. The mother who could not see you was not seen by her own mother. The father whose anger frightened you was made to swallow his own father's anger. The partner who could not commit had been abandoned in ways they had never spoken about and probably had never even fully remembered. The cruelty that landed on you originated long before you arrived in their life. You inherited it the moment you opened yourself to them. This is what mythology has been trying to tell us for thousands of years through stories of family curses passed on through generations. What Scripture has been trying to tell us through warnings about the iniquities of the fathers visited on the sons. What every wisdom tradition has encoded in its insistence that pain unhealed becomes pain transmitted. You were not chosen for cruelty because you deserved it. You were chosen because you were close enough to be reached by a transmission that had been traveling through your family or your community or your culture for far longer than your own lifetime. And the question that now stands in front of you is not, why did they do this to me? The question is, what will I do with what was given to me? Will I transmit it forward? Will I pass it down to my children, my partners, my friends, my colleagues? Will I become another link in the chain of unconscious wounding that has been moving through human beings since the beginning of recorded time? Or will I be the one who stops it? Will I be the one who does the work? Who looks honestly at what was done to me? Who feels what needs to be felt? Who integrates what needs to be integrated? Who refuses to pass the wound forward, even when every cell in my body is conditioned to do so? Will I be the one in whom the chain finally breaks? This is the spiritual significance of what happened to you. You were given a wound that had been moving through human beings for generations, and you have been given the opportunity to be the one in whom that wound finally completes its journey, where it transforms, where it becomes wisdom rather than weapon, where it becomes the source of compassion rather than the source of further cruelty. This is not a small calling. This is the calling. Now I want to tell you the deepest truth of all, the one that almost no one is willing to speak, because it requires holding two things at the same time that the rational mind insists must be kept separate. The people who mistreated you were not the cause of your wound. They were the messenger of a wound that was waiting in you to be brought into the light. Read that again. Sit with the discomfort of it. I am not saying they were innocent. They were not innocent. They made choices and bear responsibility for those choices. I am saying something more subtle and more powerful. The wound that was activated in you by their treatment was not created by them. It was already there, inherited, carried, waiting in the depths of your unconscious for the right circumstance to bring it into the light, where it could finally be seen and known and healed. If they had not been the ones who activated it, someone else would have. Because the unconscious does not allow itself to remain unconscious indefinitely. Eventually, through whatever channel it can find, it brings what is hidden to the surface where consciousness can do its work. The people who hurt you were the messengers your soul had unconsciously hired to deliver a piece of mail you had been waiting your entire life to receive. The mail was the wound, but the wound was the doorway to the part of yourself that needed to be seen, the capacity for compassion that needed to be developed, the depth of understanding that could only be born through the experience of suffering, the ability to recognize the pain of others that comes only from having known your own pain at its most undeniable. You were initiated through what was done to you, not by their conscious intention. They had no conscious intention. They were sleepwalking through their own unhealed lives, projecting their own buried material, transmitting forward what had been transmitted to them. But on a deeper level, the level the rational mind cannot quite reach, but the soul knows perfectly, you were being prepared for exactly the person you are becoming right now, in this moment, by choosing to look directly at what happened to you and ask the deeper questions and refuse to settle for the easy answers and stay with the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. This is the work. This is the alchemy. This is the path Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are by integrating everything that has been split off from your conscious awareness. And you cannot become who you truly are without doing the work of metabolizing what was done to you. You cannot bypass it. You cannot pretend you're above it. You cannot perform forgiveness before you have actually felt the rage and the grief and the bewilderment that any honest human being would feel in response to what you experienced. But you can use it. You can take what they meant for harm and use it for becoming. You can take what they intended as diminishment and use it as the raw material for the largest version of yourself. You can take the wound and turn it into the medicine. This is what the ancient alchemists meant when they spoke of turning lead into gold. They were not really speaking about metallurgy. They were speaking about the transformation of psychological suffering into spiritual wisdom. The lead is what was done to you. The gold is who you become through the conscious work of metabolizing it. And now I want to give you something practical, something you can begin tonight. A three-part method for completing the work of metabolizing what was done to you. The first part is honest seeing. You cannot heal what you will not name. You cannot integrate what you will not look at directly. You cannot release what you have not first allowed yourself to fully feel. Take time, real time, not stolen moments between obligations, to write honestly about what was done to you. Not to send to anyone, not to share, just to see. Name the people, name the actions, name the impact, name what you are still carrying because of it. Refuse the temptation to make it smaller than it was. Refuse the temptation to make excuses for them prematurely. Refuse the temptation to skip past the feeling and rush to the wisdom. The wisdom only emerges from the willingness to feel the truth of what happened. The second part is compassionate inquiry into them. Once you have allowed yourself to fully see and feel what was done to you, you are ready to begin asking the questions that will set you free. What had been done to them before they did this to me? What were they carrying that they could not put down? What had they buried in themselves that they were projecting onto me? What part of themselves were they unable to face that they recognized and attacked in me? These questions are not asked to excuse them, they're asked to liberate you. Because as long as you remain trapped in the question of why me, you are bound to the wound. The moment you understand that it was never really about you, you begin to be free. The third part is conscious choice about what you transmit. This is the work that completes the alchemy. You look honestly at the pattern that was passed to you. You feel the weight of it. You recognize how it has shaped your thoughts, your relationships, your choices, your sense of yourself. And then you choose, consciously, deliberately, with the full awareness of what you are doing. You choose to be the one in whom this pattern stops. Not perfectly, not all at once, not without setbacks and falls and moments where the old pattern reaches up from the depths and tries to express itself through you, but fundamentally, directionally, as a vow you make to yourself and to the future that flows from you. The wound stops here. The cruelty stops here. The unconsciousness that was passed to me ends in me. I will do the work. I will feel what they refuse to feel. I will look at what they refuse to look at. I will integrate what they refuse to integrate. And what flows out of me into the world will be different from what flowed into me. This is the highest spiritual achievement available to a human being, not enlightenment in some abstract metaphysical sense. The conscious refusal to transmit forward the unconsciousness you inherited. If you have stayed with this video to this point, every minute of it, then I want you to understand something. You are doing the work. You are not running from it. You are not bypassing it. You are not pretending it does not affect you. You are looking directly at the wound that was given to you and asking the questions that will eventually transform it into wisdom. This is rare. This is courageous. This is the path of the very few. Most people who are mistreated spend their entire lives trapped in the original injury, replaying it, attracting variations of it, transmitting it forward to the next generation through every relationship they touch. But you are choosing differently. You are choosing to use what was done to you as the catalyst for your own becoming. You are choosing to be the one in whom the chain breaks. Carl Jung, near the end of his extraordinary life, after decades of sitting with the deepest wounds of his patients and his own soul, wrote something I want you to carry with you long after this video ends. He wrote that the most decisive question a person could ever ask themselves was whether they were related to something infinite or not, whether something larger than themselves was working through their suffering, whether the pain of their life was random or meaningful. And he concluded, after a lifetime of honest inquiry, that the people who lived as if their suffering was meaningful, as if it was material for their becoming rather than evidence against their worth, were the people who lived the deepest and most fully human lives. You are being given the chance to live such a life. The mistreatment that was given to you, the wounds you have carried, the questions that have lived in you for years, these were not punishment. They were initiation into a depth of understanding most human beings never reach, into a capacity for compassion that can only be born from having survived what you survived, into a wisdom that becomes available only to those who have done the work of metabolizing what was done to them, rather than transmitting it forward. The privilege of a lifetime, Jung said, is to become who you truly are. And who you truly are is being forged right now in this moment in your willingness to look honestly at what happened to you and to use it as the raw material for the largest version of yourself. Type 777 in the comments if this video reached a place inside you that has been waiting to be reached. Subscribe if your soul is hungry for this depth. Share this with one person you know who's still trapped in the wound that was given to them, who's still asking why, who's still waiting for someone to give them the deeper answer. Give them this. And remember, the truth about why they mistreated you is not what you think. It was never about your worth. It was never about your failure to be enough. It was about wounds that arrived in your life through them but did not originate with them. It was about projections cast over your face by people who could not see what was actually in front of them. It was about generations of unprocessed pain, seeking finally through you a vessel capable of doing the work of transformation. And you are that vessel. You always were. The wound was the invitation. The work is the answer. And the becoming that flows from your willingness to do the work is the gift you give not only to yourself, but to everyone who comes after you. The chain breaks here, in you, in this moment, in the choice you are making, even now, to look at what happened with the eyes of the soul rather than the eyes of the wounded ego. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And what was done to you was the doorway through which that becoming was always meant to begin.